Sean here with BaseMint Comics, and this issue is going to be a Corner Box Classics, where I will be going over what books I would have picked up off the comic racks the week of March 16th, 1982, if I had pedaled up to the shop that week. So, obviously, I don't have a time machine, so you can't see me pedaling around in March 1982, but yesterday we did get out in the snow, and the wheels on that little carrier come off, and you can strap some skis on. So we did some biking with the skis, and also Hank went sledding for the first time, so that was pretty good. So there you have it. So I'll be back with the first book from March 16th, 1982. All right, so first up for this Corner Box Classics is Defenders number 108, The Wasteland, released Wednesday, March 16th, 1982, written by J.M. DeMatteis, with pencils by Don David Perlin, inks by Joe Sinnott, Sal Trapani, Hilary Barta, and Al Milgrom, letters by Shelley Lefferman, and colors by George Roussos. Obviously, if you've been watching the channel for a while, in the Corner Box Classic thing, I am obviously going back and reading every comic that I have in my collection in chronological order. The channel started with October of 1981, but I've obviously been doing this since the first issue of Fantastic Four in 1961. You know, added in Spider-Man, added in Avengers, you know, blah, blah. You get the idea. And Defenders, before I did this, I did a very extensive, mapped out the entire chronology of the X-Men, built a big spreadsheet for every appearance, everything that might have crossed over, kind of put them in story order where it would have made the most sense. And obviously during that time period, pre-Giant Size X-Men, post Uncanny X-Men number 65, 66, when the X-Men were canceled, the characters went off and appeared in other books, you know. And so, for instance, if Iceman shows up in a Strange Tales or something like that, I would have read that during that kind of time period. Alex and Lorna appear in Incredible Hulk. And obviously during that time period, the Champions started. So I picked up the Champions, read that title. And Defenders got on my radar because that's where Angel Beast and Iceman went after, well, at least Beast and Iceman, went after the Champions and pre-X Factor. And so that was the first time that I read all of this Defender stuff. And then if you watch the video about me getting that collection because of reading a letters page, that's how I got the first 100 issues of Defenders. And so, you know, I'd been reading all of those, and I will say that this is all a very long explanation to say I'm not a big Defenders fan. The book, like, it's interesting, but it's not what I would normally check out. It's a little, and this is kind of funny to say considering that I'm reading comics, but it's a little weird. It's a little too out there. And for the most part, particularly like this iteration, when you start dragging in Son of Satan and stuff like that, it's not exactly my cup of tea. But anyways, cup of tea. You know, I am in. How do I? Like, I'm enjoying the Defenders, but it's my least favorite of the books, and I wonder, you know, if I had been biking up to the shop in March of 1982, picking up this off the rack, I probably would have given up on Defenders. And this is kind of one of those moments where I go like, is this, like, I've read it probably 3 times. This will be, I think, the 3rd time of reading through Defenders, and I really got to kind of pay attention to like what I actually like, to see if it's something that I want to, you know, it's kind of this, as I get older, like, pare down the collection to the essentials of things that I'm going to read. My wife at one point brought up a really interesting point. You know, I was kind of lamenting some of the stuff that I had down here, you know, not particularly enjoying it as much. You know, the more you get, I think, as a comic book fan, you know, when I was a kid, it was like, you know, I had a trundle bed with no bed underneath it, and it was perfect. It was exactly the height of a long box. And so it was like I had a couple long boxes under my bed, and it was like everything to me was a hit, you know. But now, 33, 34, 35 years of collecting, there's some stuff in here that's in here, and I need to kind of like weed out the stuff that's not going to get reread a ton, you know. And so this could possibly be my last pass of Defenders, is kind of what I'm saying. It's a long way to get around it, but you know, my wife made this really good point where she was like, if Henry were to come down here and pick up a comic book, because obviously, like, these are all single issues in here, you know, so it's a library of single issues and trades and hardcovers and whatnot. If he were to pull something off the shelf, would I be happy if what he grabs is the first comic that he ever reads? And that, like, man, that rewired the collector, like, mentality that I have. Anyways, so Defenders 108. What a setup for this. Defenders 108. The Enchantress shows up, always a blast. And she is like, Defenders is such a weird book that it's like almost hard for me to explain. But Enchantress basically like has possessed Valkyrie inside of her own sword, and is basically like, I need you guys to go, and they basically have to go and steal this rose, which represents purity and love, from this other planet. And so she sends half of the Defenders to do this, and Beast, Doctor Strange, Gargoyle, and Spider-Man, who is along for the ride, is like, we don't want any part of this. So they go to this planet, they run into 2 little aliens that are like happy and idyllic and worshiping this rose. And so they go to chop that down. And this upsets one of the aliens, who I guess previously has been like full of rage. And, you know, so the other alien like begs them, like, please don't do this. And so Valkyrie is able to like talk through the sword. It's weird. It's comics. It's weird. She's able to talk through the sword and basically like is like, don't do this. So they wind up not doing this. This infuriates the Enchantress right at that point. The other Defenders plus Spider-Man show up where Enchantress is and realize that she's like about to destroy Valkyrie's body. But this somehow splits the Barbara Norris part of Valkyrie from her, and like, so now Valkyrie, for the first time in the Defenders, is actually no longer Barbara Norris, which is it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And I'm not getting it. The whole Valkyrie is actually someone else. It's been a weird ride. Yeah, like I said, Defenders, definitely the bottom of the stack when I'm doing the Cornerbacks Classics, unfortunately. Can't win them all, man. They're not all going to be great. Up next, Iron Man number 159, When Strikes Diablo, released March 16th, 1982, written by Roger McKenzie, penciled by Paul Smith, inks by Terry Austin, letters by Jack Morelli, and colors by Don Warfield. I was pretty, when I opened this issue, I was pretty excited. I love the villain Diablo. I love the villain Diablo. I can't wait. Fingers crossed. One of these days, Marvel Legends, Hasbro is gonna get the memo, and they're gonna make a Diablo figure, because they need more Fantastic Four villains. I'm sorry. That one wave, not good enough for me. Okay. So, also, love Paul Smith pencils. He's one of the greatest to do it. Terry Austin on inks, also one of the greatest to do it. So when I cracked open this issue, I was like, holy smokes, look at this cover. It's Iron Man fighting Diablo and a two-headed dragon. I was like, I'm all in. So then when I cracked it open and it was penciled by Paul Smith, I got very excited. But the part that cracked me up, I love Paul Smith's pencils, but I did have to chuckle because there are points in this issue where he legitimately look at Iron Man right there. He looks like his mask is smiling. And I noticed that there were times during this issue where the mask changed shape. And that was weird to me. But like I said, love Paul Smith pencils. Anyways, Diablo was last seen in Fantastic Four 236 when Byrne takes over writing and art duties. And so he just this guy pops up who's working at Stark International and doesn't know why. Nobody knows him. There's a whole thing where they're like, hey, we're paying this dude, but we don't know who he is. And so then he stumbles into a lab, and it's strongly hinted that this is basically just Diablo, as this other person, unaware that he is actually Diablo because of what happened in Fantastic Four number 236. This was a spell that Doctor Strange put on him so that he couldn't be Diablo anymore. And of course, that doesn't happen. Diablo uses some alchemy to and potions to disguise himself as the security chief for Stark International. Then changes into Tony Stark to get around the building. Hilarity ensues, and then it is in classic comic fashion, we're 10 pages into this, and all of a sudden now it is Iron Man versus Diablo, drawn by Paul Smith, and that's awesome. And he messes with, there's some really great pages in here where Diablo is making Iron Man with a spell fight all of his old Iron Man suits, and that was good stuff. I can let go of look at his face. He's mad. His mask shouldn't do that. But I'm like, whatever, it's fun. It's Paul Smith. He's still a great artist. And I got a bonus epilogue with the Fantastic Four in it. So I was like, I wasn't expecting to see the Fantastic Four. But you get Paul Smith drawn, short-haired Sue Storm. And that's always a good time. So that was fun. I'm thinking this was probably, Iron Man and one other issue that's coming up were probably my favorites of the week. Up next, Marvel Team Up number 118, Meeting of the Minds, March 16th, 1982. Written by J.M. DeMatteis with pencils by Herb Trimpe. Inks by Mike Esposito, letters by Diane Albers, and colors by Bob Sharon. The last issue had Wolverine and Spider-Man going up against Professor Power. I I probably don't remember the last issues as much as I should, because I think that was all done well before Christmas, and I crammed a ton of Christmas comics into December, so I am a little rusty on the Corner Box Classics. What are you going to do? Perhaps I should watch my own videos before I follow up so I can have a refresher course. I will say, when I was first reading this issue, it opens up with like a Danger Room sequence where like Wolverine and Spider-Man are back at the mansion and all that stuff's going on, which is always a good, like, fun, you know, I'm sure it's like writers and artists are like, oh, I want to do something Danger Room. They can smash stuff up. But what is blatantly apparent, especially when I was doing like the original X-Men read and pulling stuff like this in, because like Wolverine shows up in Marvel Team Up, Professor Xavier shows up in Marvel Team Up. So these were issues that I've had for years as I did this X-Men thing. And the issue that I have is Claremont has the voices of the, like, he is the writer of X-Men. He is. Like, no argument can be made about that. And it is never more apparent than when another writer writes the X-Men. They just feel slightly off. It's not that it's bad. It's just not. It's not as good as Claremont writing the X-Men. It's just not. Like, Wolverine just sort of loses his like true character, and it kind of just, he just turns into, it's almost like you're like watching an episode of X-Men the animated series, and then like right in the middle of it you're like, boom, I gotta watch Pride of the X-Men, and suddenly Wolverine's just like mean and Australian, and you're like, that's not okay. And that's sort of how this feels when the characters are written, particularly during this time period, by someone that's not Claremont. But what are you going to do? There is a good gag where, like, Xavier's going back into the city, and, you know, Peter, once again, can't, like, web swing from Westchester. So he, like, lands on the car that Xavier is in, like, softly on the roof, and then just sleeps on top of the car roof. So there's, like, a gag where, like, they're on the freeway, and he's just hanging out on, you know, and other cars are noticing that Spider-Man is hanging out. So this obviously takes them to like the Professor Power thing, which again has, like, you know, Spider-Man then runs into their pseudo-Roman guards, which was like majorly a thing in the 80s, I've noticed as I've been doing this. And you know, Power wants him to help his son. This felt a little like, it was like this sort of, I know that obviously Stryker in comics was a preacher, but in the, you know, second X-Men movie, he was like military guy and had a son that was obviously like messed up. And so this feels a little bit more like that character. Like Professor Power feels a little bit more like that character in the second X-Men movie, more so than that character felt like William Stryker, to me anyways. So he obviously like wants Xavier's help. Xavier can't. Mentalo gets involved. It's a lot. I don't necessarily know if a Professor X Spider-Man team up is a, you know, it's not as great as it sounds. But then when the authorities eventually show up, there is a solid, like, Xavier also like kind of, which, I mean, he shows everybody that everything's cool, that like there isn't, you know, bodies everywhere and people knocked unconscious and stuff like that, so that they don't get in trouble for this. But it's also, I mean, I get where Xavier would do that, but he's also not a big fan of that. Anyways, it was okay, not my favorite issue of Marvel Team Up. However, I will say this, getting an issue that you're like so-so on, a lot easier to swallow when the price tag is 60 cents and not $4.99 or $5.99. Ridiculous. Up next, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, number 67, Boomerang, the Killer Who Keeps Coming Back. Released on March 16th, 1982, written by Bill Mantlo, pencils by Ed Hannigan, inks by Al Milgram, letters by James Novak, and colors by Bob Sharon. I know Ed Hannigan's art mostly from the Defenders that I was trashing earlier, not that particular issue, but it in general. I did enjoy this issue and his pencils. It opens up with Boomerang killing this dude who is flipping on the Kingpin, and he's in witness protection. And there's like Boomerang, like you get your title card with him looking through the peephole, and then all of a sudden, you know, an explosion. And I got to admit, I'm going to be completely honest, the majority of my Boomerang knowledge, knowing who that character is, comes straight from Superior Foes of Spider-Man, I think, where he's like, the time period in recent Spider-Man when the two of them are roommates. And I was like, it's a pretty hardcore. Obviously, this was not when the character was introduced. It's not his first appearance, but it's his first appearance to me in what I've been reading, and pretty hardcore. So he does this, and then we cut to Peter, who is late for class, ditched Marcy Whitman, I believe it's Marcy Whitman, when they were supposed to be studying. Robbie Robertson's also calling him to get him to take some pictures of everything that just happened in the opening couple of pages of this, and he's late for school, and so J. Jonah Jameson's like, oh, Lance Bannon will do it. And so it's just been a rough couple of days for Peter, and he's not having a good go of it. So then Peter's swinging through the city, and there's a nice transition where he like swings past a building, and you see Kingpin looking out the window. And Boomerang shows up, and he's like, hey, I did this thing to try to get in your gang where I killed this guy who was going to flip on you. And the Kingpin's like, yeah, I fed that guy a bunch of bogus information that wasn't going to like pan out to kind of keep the feds or whatever like off my case for other stuff, and you just messed that up. So we're going to kill you. So that to me, just knowing the character from modern Spider-Man, where he's kind of a loser, it tracked, and I thought that was pretty funny. So then he's like, Kingpin's like, you know what? You can make it up to me if you kill Spider-Man. So that's it's not Marcy Whitman, it's Marcy Kane. It's Deb Whitman. I was combining the two. So then, you know, it cuts to Peter at school. He's having a rough go of it, kind of doing the whole, the curses, why is the Spider-Man thing always going to make me like not a great student? And he's a dick to Deb Whitman, which sucks because he's always mean to her. And so then he's swinging through the city, and that's when Boomerang and him start fighting. And so it's and then this fight leads like through the Daily Bugle. And so Lance Bannon is like, oh man, I'm going to get pictures of Spider-Man. And so that was kind of funny. So, you know, it is a Kingpin then sends some of his guys to get rid of Boomerang, like during this Spider-Man fight. And so Spider-Man winds up stopping Kingpin's guys from killing Boomerang. And so then I was like, oh, well, that, you know, that might lead into the Boomerang that I am more familiar with. So this, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and Iron Man were my favorite issues of the week. Going back to my big X-Men thing, explains why I do not collect this title regularly, but if there were X-Men characters, or if there was a situation that kind of like, you know, tickled my fancy, I would pick it up. So, last issue of March 16th, 1982 that I would have picked up off the rack would have been What If, featuring Iron Man and Dazzler. This is issue number 33. So the first story is What If Dazzler had become the Herald of Galactus. This is pulling the idea from Dazzler issue 9 through 11. It's written by Danny Fingeroth, penciled by Mike Vosberg, inks by John DeAgostino, letters by Diana Albers, and colors by George Russos. And this obviously picks up, like I said, from Dazzler 9 through 11, where Dazzler was like kidnapped by Terrax, and she was meant to become the new Herald of Galactus. That didn't pan out, but this issue, she does become Galactus's Herald. It's absurd. It's weird. She winds up like... it's a very Beauty and the Beast-esque tale where she like pulls out the compassion Galactus, but then backfires because then some aliens try to kill him. And he's like, see what happened when I started sparing these worlds, blah, blah, blah. And that's how that one kind of shakes out. And it ends on a bum note. Like she eventually goes back to Earth, but everybody on Earth is dead. And I was like, this is a perfect example of like, this is why I don't regularly get What If, because What If spends like 10 pages like just info dumping like what the world is that you're in. It's not very snappy, and then it usually always ends like hopeless, and it's just not a good time. So second story, better than the first, was What If Iron Man had been trapped in King Arthur's time? This is obviously pulling from the classic and fantastic Iron Man number 149 and 150. This is written by Stephen D. Grant with pencils by Don David Perlin, inks by Bob Layton, letters by Diana Albers, and colors by Glennis Oliver. Obviously, in that Doom quest, fantastic. Like if you've never read Iron Man number 149 and 150, please do. It's fantastic. There was a time period where you could probably pick those up for $5 a piece. That is no longer the case, I'm sure, because of a certain Marvel movie that's coming out at the end of this year. But if you can find that story, it's great. Doom and Tony kind of team up to get out of there using a time machine. This obviously, Doom betrays him and Tony is stuck there. He's stuck in King Arthur time, and they are battling Morgana Le Fay. Tony's armor is sort of like not as powerful as it should be because he was drained of most of the energy by Dr. Doom, so Dr. Doom could get like sent back. And man, after reading the Dazzler story, I was like, oh, I can already tell what's going to happen. Tony's going to eventually get back there, and Doom's going to have gotten there first. Because Tony's not there, Doom's going to have killed everybody, and another What If issue ends on a bum note. And so I was fully prepared for that. And what winds up happening is Tony uses like the last of his power to obviously help save the day. But during this battle, Arthur is killed, and Arthur basically is like, hey, Tony is going to take my spot on the round table. And so Tony is then left in King Arthur time as the new head of the Knights of the Round Table. And so it sort of ends with Tony as a man out of time in King Arthur time. And while that is not, a happy-go-lucky, fun story, what I did like about it was it sort of made it sort of was like, there you go, Tony. That's how Steve Rogers feels in our time, a man out of time. And so I enjoyed that portion of it quite a bit, actually. And I thought it was funny because when I picked this up off of whatever dollar bin box or whatever back in the day that I got this issue, I got it for the Dazzler story because Dazzler is entrenched in X-Men continuity, and I wound up liking the Iron Man story even more. So this is a perfect example of the point of this. It's like before I had probably just read that Dazzler story and was like, garbage, but I gotta have it because Dazzler's in it. And then because of reading all of my Iron Man stuff as well, now that I'm trying to read everything in here to figure out what I truly do love, I was introduced to a follow-up to a Iron Man story that I really liked, saw a different ending angle on it, and enjoyed it immensely. So, those are the books that I would have picked up March 16th, 1982. That's Corner Box Classics for this week. If you enjoy what I'm doing, the Wednesday rides up to the shop to check out new books, and this very slow week-by-week crawl through the Marvel Universe, please hit the subscribe button. If you've read any of these and enjoyed them or hated them, leave a comment. Let me know. If you are a huge Defenders fan and you want to tell me why you love it, I would really appreciate it, because it might give me some fresh eyes to look at this as I'm going through it this time. So please do. So anyways, thanks for watching. We will be back on Wednesday for a new comic book Wednesday. I don't know if we're going to be able to bike this Wednesday, though, because I have to take the missus into the city for a possible jury duty. Fingers crossed that doesn't come to be. So we'll see. Either way, new comics are on the way. So we will check out what the second week of 2026 has in store for us with new comics. All right, so have a good one. Thanks for taking this ride with us. Bye.